So Earth system and resources, 10 to 15% of the apes example. Next week we're doing the pollution, which is the 25 to 30%. Alright, so Earth science concepts, those atmosphere, those global warming, global water resources. Stop talking please. That's why I mic myself because my voice is already starting to go. So I don't talk the whole period, my voice goes really quickly. Soil and soil dynamics, that's all our system and resource outline. This is in the first packet I gave you, when it had that little outline thing, the little assignment, mark off, that's just copied from that. Alright, so in there it talks about geologic timescale. This is a geologic timescale. You don't have to memorize this, just kind of know it a little bit. Earth's 4.7 billion years old. And you just memorize it. Earth is 4.7 billion years old approximately. You don't need to memorize, but kind of know eons and eras. Mammals came around during the Mesozoic Era. They may ask you one question on this. Earth's composition. So this is what we just did our test on. So the inner core is solid iron and nickel. Then the outer core, the next layer out, is molten or liquid-ish iron and sulfur. Then there's the mantle, which is solid rock, which is composed of the asthenosphere and the lithosphere.
Why is there no nickel in the outer?
I'm sure there is, it's just not like abundant. No, it's there. I mean, we have nickel. It's just not like most nickel. So there's that picture. You see it before. There it is again. So tectonic plates. There's 12 large pieces of lithosphere. This is looking familiar. Because I took the notes from this and gave it to you in the last notes. That's why this looks familiar. Convergent boundaries, when two plates are going towards each other. And the subduction one is when one goes under the other one, which was on the test. Divergent boundaries when they're going apart, away from each other, and the transform fault, that's what's happening in California, in San Francisco, and LA, and they have those earthquakes. They're going parallel to each other and kind of doing this sort of thing, and every time they slip, it makes an earthquake. That's a transform fault.
That causes most of the earthquakes, right?
Yeah. So volcanoes are either active or dormant. There's three kinds: rift volcanoes, subduction volcanoes, hotspot volcanoes. This is how Hawaii's made. I'm going faster because, and plus we just did this. Earthquakes result from vibrations of the plates moving, mostly the transform boundaries. The focus, remember, is where it is inside the Earth, so it could be a mile down. The epicenter is its location on the surface, so if it's located 20 miles outside of San Francisco, that would be the epicenter. But its actual focus could be 20 miles outside of Los Angeles and a mile down. That's the focus. So they like to ask questions. They'll probably ask a question about the Sendai Japanese situation. So look that up. Oldest rocks are 3.8 billion years old. They're sedimentary, metamorphic, and igneous. We just did this, so
Yeah.
you know, you've seen this already. Soil is the link between biotic and abiotic. There's three kinds of soil: clay, silt, and sand. Here's the different types of soil.
Oh, pretty.
Yeah.
Wow. It looks like chocolate.
This one's sand. This one's clay. And the other ones are in between.
Oh, very important.
Sand holds the most water. Clay. So physical weathering, chemical weathering, biological weathering. Soil layers. This is pretty important. The O horizon is the uppermost layer. That's where humus is. That's the crap, literally. And the soil meat. This is topsoil. This is the O layer. O for organic. That's why it's O. This is when we talk about the different ecosystems. We said they have a fertile soil, like the prairies and the temperate grasslands have very fertile soil. That means they have a large O horizon or O layer. A layer is below the O layer. That's the bottom part of the topsoil. That's where the leaching occurs. So when it rains or there's acid rain, it'll pull the stuff out of the soil, the nutrients out of the soil, and it happens in the A layer. B horizon receives all minerals, so they go from this layer down to that layer, and that's called the zone of alluviation. C horizon is the bottommost layer of the soil, and R horizon is the bedrock. So if you think R, rock. Okay, so O is organic. A, B, C, R is rock.
Oh,
Supposed to remember.
Mr. Stackhouse, if O soil is above A soil, why is A soil considered the
A
topsoil?
is the lowest part of the topsoil.
Lowest?
So it's like it's the bottom of the topsoil. So this is the top of topsoil. This is the bottom. So the dead and dying organic material is here. Once it's not alive and it's already decomposed into soil, it goes into this area. So it's still organic.
So the oil is not really the oil is not really soil.
Not quite. Yeah, it's like crap.
Yeah. Okay. Phony.
So then when it gets to A, this is all topsoil. And then B and C and R is down here. Humans and soil. So soil has to be arable or where you can plant stuff for agriculture. An equal combination of clay, silt, and sand is called loamy soil, and that's the best for plant growth because it holds the right amount of water, has the right amount of nutrients. The most fertile soil are aggregates or clumps of soil that are bound together by organic material. Those are all like loamy words. Humans planting one type of crop in the soil is called monoculture. Monoculture is very bad for the soil and for genetic variability of the plants. So if the plants aren't evolving or their genes aren't changing, then they're going to be more susceptible to pests and diseases and leach of soil and nutrients. And actually, an example of this would be tomatoes. The tomatoes that you buy in the store right now, they have been genetically, a lot of their food has been genetically modified. If you look at the tomatoes, there's very few or no tomato seeds. They made tomatoes so that the flesh, not the inside part, the outside part is really big, and then the juicy stuff on the inside, there's very little of it. But if you buy a really expensive $4 heirloom tomato, that's one that's not been genetically modified, or they call them at Publix ugly tomatoes. If you ever go buy the tomatoes, you'll see ugly tomatoes, like they're $4 a pound versus all the other kinds of tomatoes, fine ripened tomatoes and everything, which are like $1.99 a pound. So the expensive ones, the reason they're so expensive is that they're not genetically modified, so they have a lot more of that juicy stuff in the seeds. And the reason they did that was so that people who planted the tomatoes can't harvest the seeds and replant tomato plants. So they have to buy their seeds from a distributor. So they genetically modified it, not for us, but to make a profit. Otherwise, farmers would dry out some of the tomatoes and use those seeds rather than buying the seeds from the tomato plant distributor people that sell them the seeds. So a lot of the foods and agriculture has been genetically modified, not necessarily, yes, to make more, yes, to make it bigger, but more so a lot of times so that the farmers who buy the seeds can only buy the seeds from that place, and they can't use the plant itself for seeds. Does that make sense?
You mean the seeds are bought at a specific location, and the plant that is produced from that is
They just genetically modify it so it doesn't create seeds.
It doesn't create seeds. You can only get the seeds from like they do with the grapes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So you have to buy it from the person or the company that makes the seeds. Otherwise, you can plant your own stuff. Same with corn and things like that. So basically, genetically modified foods, one, to make more of it, to keep it pest resistant, to make it bigger, feed more people, all those things, but they also genetically modify it so that they're basically sterile. They can't reproduce. so farmers can't use them to make more.
That possibly lead to the extinction of the tree. If they didn't
If
keep
they
track of it,
stop, if say something were to happen in the
all the seeds
the
were.
seed place blew up and it didn't make more, yeah.
But what are the odds of that?
Yeah, it just happened. Not quite happening.
happening.
All right, crop rotation prevents that. The green revolution is a term used to describe the abundant growth of crops which occurred over the past 50 years. This results in soil salinization or excess soil and land degradation. This sounds like it's a good thing, but it's really actually a bad thing. Green revolution, you're like, yeah, go green, green revolution. No, that's not what it is. It means they overplanted in the Midwest, and they're planting. That's when agriculture became a big thing in the U.S., the green revolution. And it's a bad thing. It leached all the nutrients out of the soil. And soil erosion. Soil conservation, you want to use manure, you want to compost to keep the organic material in the soil. Organic agriculture is a method of farming that utilizes compost, manure, crop rotation, and non-chemical methods to manage soil fertility, pest control. So this is where integrated pest management can come into play. Modified tillage practices, use trees or other barriers to reduce wind, so you don't have as many soil erosion, much soil erosion. So laws, know the laws. I gave you the other handout.
All of them?
Well, you should know a few of them. You're gonna have to know some laws, maybe not the soil law, but you may have to know some of the laws.
Like how
So I
many-
gave you the basic ones, the important
I'm sure
ones.
it's fresh.
In the first packet, that
Right.
list of, there's 2 sheets that say important environmental legislation. Those are the ones you need.
Is that the one after the 115 wasted grapes?
Things right before it. It's
Right
like a couple
before it?
pages before it.
Let me check.
Yeah.
There's 18 on the WISGO 8, so do you think those will be more important?
Yeah, if you just study those out, you'll be fine. Atmosphere is the layer of gas that holds everything across the earth. Troposphere is where we live.
Hey, Mr. Michelson. Can I steal some paper?
Love you, my
So this is where we breathe. This is where the greenhouse effect happens. Troposphere is about 5 to 10 miles. Weather takes place here. Here's a picture. Troposphere, stratosphere, mesosphere. Where's the ozone layer going to fall?
It's at the bottom of the stratosphere.
Yeah, bottom of the stratosphere. So the ozone layer is like right here.
Why is it showing the outside?
Are those all the layers? The 5?
It's like a homemade picture.
Ozone-
So climate is based on the weather, kind of like you average out the weather and that's how you get the climate. So the weather is day to day, what's happening, it's humid, it's rainy, it's sunny, but when you average it out, you might have a rainy season, that's the climate. So it's averaging over 30 years or more. The 2 most important factors for describing climate are the temperature and the precipitation. Precipitation doesn't have to just be rain, it can be fog, it can be sleet, snow, hail.
Mr. Stackhouse.
Yeah,
So if we have a cold front that lasts for 2 days, it doesn't mean that that's the climate of
yeah, it's just the weather. If we went into an ice age, that would be a climate.
That's all.
All right, so winds from around the world cause solar heating, the rotation of the earth, and physical properties of air, water, and land. That results in climate. Winds in the northern hemisphere deflect to the right, go like this. And this is where that idea where when you flush the toilet, it goes in the right, in the northern hemisphere, and in the southern hemisphere, it goes to the left.
Isn't that a myth? Isn't that like an urban myth?
Well, it depends on your toilet. Like a lot of toilets, the flow is pushing it one way to rinse out the toilet bowl easily. The old-fashioned toilets where it just like opened up a lever thing in the bottom, which allowed the water to just drain without any pressure. That follows this. For all the toilets now, and that's a long time ago. That's like the early 1900s that they did that, 1950s. But all toilets now are forced to go in one way.
Yeah, there was an episode on The Simpsons
Cleans
about
that out a
that.
little bit.
Hey.
All right, and this is called the Coriolis effect. So it goes this way in the northern
See, there's an actual effect that's on
Is
the
that
test.
way in the southern?
See, no, it's not gonna be on the test. There's a good chance. It's not complaining.
Complain.
Types of wind. There's wind move stuff around. Yeah. Trade winds. They refer to this. There's northern trade winds. There's southern trade winds. They're called trade winds because that's how back in the olden days when ships had sails, they would go on trading routes around the world and they had to use the winds, so they were called the trade winds. So they would catch sails and go in a specific wind pattern to the other continents and other areas of the world. That's before engines. Then there's westerly winds, horse latitudes, which are winds near the equator that are weak. Doldrums, this word is commonly used when you're feeling down and depressed. They've related this to you're in the doldrums or something like that, doldrums. We don't use a lot, but like in modern day language, but it was used to basically say depression. Somebody's got the doldrums, it's like a temporary depression. And that's because the winds near the equator, they don't move, they're still. So if you get stuck in right next to the equator and you're in a sailboat, you're not going to move anywhere. So you're in the doldrums, so you're just like stuck. And hopefully some wind will come by and push you out. So it's like you're stuck being depressed. That's why jet streams are the fast moving air in the upper troposphere and have the most influence on weather. Weather events, hurricanes, they're in the Atlantic Ocean. You know all about that. Typhoons are in the Pacific Ocean, so the Pacific Ocean doesn't get hurricanes, they get typhoons. El Nino is this, La Nina is the opposite of this, and both are called enzos. Obviously, you got to read this stuff a little bit more, what I'm talking about. Water covers 75% of the Earth. That's a good number to remember. Actually, 74.
But
Now, if you're
tomato,
around-
tomato.
Yes, exactly. Salt water has the average salinity of 3.5% of the water is salt. So most saline, so if something is saline, it's salty. The most saline water is in the Red Sea. Actually, I think that's incorrect. I think it's the Dead Sea. Yes, it's the Dead Sea. And you can actually float in the Dead Sea.
Yeah.
You can like go out, just like lay there and you'll float.
You can walk across it like Jesus.
The least saline water is the Baltic Sea. Fresh water contains very little salt and comes from precipitation, groundwater, and melting ice and snow. Salt water is heavier than fresh water, so fresh water stays on top of salt water. If you remember that Planet Earth episode, the caves one, because it was my favorite.
Yeah.
There was a picture or a little segment in there where the divers were going to a cave, and it looked like there were two layers of water. The bottom layer was the salt water, and the top layer was the fresh water.
The relationship between salt water and fresh water regarding why salt water is salty and fresh water is not. It relates to the actual sediments in the rivers that are carried down to the ocean, and over millions of years is actually disproportionately to the rocks the time that goes this salt living.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know, I mean, that's how
Honestly, I was thinking about it when I was saying it. I was like, I don't know exactly what percentage it has to be when you call it from brackish. That's a mixture of both to salt water. So at some point it's fresh, then there's a little bit of salt there, and then a little more it turns into brackish water. It's a mixture, and then a little more it turns into salt.
Mr. Stackhouse, so what did you say that for our own purpose we should define this as when we can break and when we can't?
3.5%.
What stops osmosis from spreading it all the way through?
Yeah. All right. Continuing on, the littoral zone. That's that. Magnetic zone. This isn't that important. If you're going to skip something, skip this stuff because they're not going to ask you this. They may, but they usually don't.
Better safe than sorry.
Yeah. If you got to skip something, skip this. The fundal, benthic. This is all freshwater lake stuff. So this is a diagram. Littoral zone, medic, benthic. These are the oceanic zones. They kind of correspond. So coastal, those are the magnetic. So those are all those. picture. So the first one was freshwater, and this one's saltwater.
Mr. Stackhouse,
Yeah.
so the giant squid is in the Bayfield? Bayfield?
According to that picture, yes.
Yes, but I mean, the giant squid, they say it's in the deepest.
That's what
water
it's
area.
down here. So that might not be correct. But what I'm trying to show here is the different zones. It's not.
You know about Google? Like, seriously?
All right,
Thank you.
moving to the next one.